The Star and D'Amico Show is brought to you by cheapesttshirts.ca. If you're looking for quality gear without overpaying, shop cheapesttshirts.ca. Huge selection for men, women, and kids. Tees, hoodies, headwear, bags, and more. Proud Montreal business. Order today, ship today, delivery tomorrow. That's cheapesttshirts.ca. Local, fast, and affordable. Brought to you by instacustoms.com. Do you need custom gear from a local Montreal business? Instacustoms.com has you covered. Custom shirts, hoodies, hats, and more made your way. Fast turnaround, great quality, and proudly Montreal-based. Check out instacustoms.com. Brought to you by Cabletel. For trusted alarm systems in Quebec and Eastern Ontario, choose Cabletel. Over 20 years of expert installation and top-tier protection for homes and businesses. Check out Cabletel.com. Email them info@Cabletel.com. It's Cabletel. Peace of mind you can count on. Brought to you by Morella's Steakhouse. Looking for an unforgettable night out? Morella's Steakhouse on Highway 132. It's just 15 minutes from Montreal, serving up premium cuts and bold flavors, and no tax on your bill. Book your table tonight at morellassteakhouse.ca. Taste excellence tonight. Brought to you by Little Bear. Give your pet the best with Little Bear Pet Supply. It's a proudly family-owned business here in Montreal for over 30 years. Chuck, Evie, and their all-star staff have you taken care of with all the top brands at the best prices, and they really care for your pets. Shop online at littlebearonline.com or visit them on St. Catherine across from Westmount Square. It's Little Bear Pet Supply. Brought to you by McLean's Pub. Head over to McLean's Pub, 1210 Peel Street in the heart of downtown Montreal. Great food, cold drinks, and big games on all the screens. McLean's Pub, good times and great company. What a pleasure it is to be with you as we get closer to NHL trade deadline. As I remind you, here we are now more or less a week out from our incredible VIP draw, thanks to our proud sponsor, Morella's Steakhouse. All the instructions and the how to enter will be the pinned comment at the top of this page. We're giving away 2 tickets to see the Habs and Bruins March 17th with luxury transportation to and from the game and $200 to spend at one of the premier steakhouses in Montreal at Morella's Steakhouse. There's Marco D'Amico. I'm Sean Starr. Marco, we're a day away from NHL trade deadline. Lots of reaction in the aftermath of the Montreal Canadiens, and something that we've been beating constantly as a topic, as a concerning aspect of this team, Marco, is net front presence. And let's try to connect the dots. Number one question on the board: how important is it that this management team take a look at the bottom pair in terms of bolstering it up? I don't know if Struble or Xhekaj consistently pass their auditions throughout the season.
I think that they need a different kind of look on the bottom pair. I think it's undeniable at this point, and that's the reason why they're looking into this, right? Like we talked about it last week. They were looking into defensive options that could potentially come in, at least in the short term, and kind of better insulate this defensive brigade. Because again, like we saw last night, especially the third pair, it was really difficult without the last change. Kept getting bullied around the net, getting pushed around when the games got chippy. With respect to Alex Carrier, with respect to Jayden Struble, unfortunately, just not able to play in that kind of playoff environment. They are not. It's unfortunate, and this dates back to last year. To a degree, I think Carrier can hold his own, but I think, I'm not a huge fan of Matheson and Gooley together.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that they don't have viable options on the third pair that can move up, and don't say Arber Xhekaj can do it. Arber Xhekaj cannot play on the opposite side in a top 4 pair. He cannot, with respect. Again, I understand people are a fan of him, but he can't do it either. So I think there is a glaring need there, and be it via a short-term trade, be it via a trade for a player with term, or be it in the form of patience and hoping that David Reinbacher continues his excellent play of late and eventually develops into that in about a year. Well, that's where the Canadiens are right now, which is why they've kicked tires on defensemen across the league, and why they're considering, or at least listening to the possibility of remodeling their bottom pair.
Let's talk about the value of the bottom pair as it relates to Friday's 3 p.m. deadline. And a reminder again, Marco and I will be live Friday afternoon from 2:30 until 3:30. So we'll get a taste of kind of maybe what's happened. We'll recap all the moves. And then as usual, the old fax machine line from trade deadline as trades kind of trickle in shortly after the 3 p.m. deadline. So we're going to be with you for 60 minutes to recap and kind of lay the groundwork for what's happened on trade deadline in the NHL. But to the value of Struble and Xhekaj, it's not a hot take, right? To think that Arber Xhekaj, in terms of if this team wants to move, Xhekaj is the one that has the more trade value that maybe could
Oh yeah,
fill a need in a return. So yeah, so it's no question. So what about the
no question.
speculation around Calgary? A 1-for-1. I mean, Zach Whitecloud, is that an option? Is that an upgrade? How do you see all of that stuff?
I mean, if they trade Arber Xhekaj, Zach Whitecloud is the kind of profile that the Canadians would need coming back so that they could play that style, but positionally on his natural right side. And he's got the playoff experience. He's been around the league. He's signed for a couple more years at $2.75 million. Like that checks boxes. Now, I'm not about to start a rumor that it's 1-for-1. I'm not
No.
even about to start a rumor that the Canadians are considering a Xhekaj trade directly. What I will tell you is this isn't the first team that's been interested in Arber Xhekaj, and it's not the first time I hear that Arber Xhekaj is in trade discussions. No, I'm not going to start unveiling everything, but I have heard Arber Xhekaj's name in trade discussions with other teams this season. So this is not a shock to me.
There's been a lot of very passionate takes about Arber Xhekaj. Marco, I don't need to tell you that, but he is very much a fan favorite. And if we go the whole way and we talk about Arber Xhekaj getting moved before Friday's deadline, is the evaluation in? Are you satisfied with the look this organization has given him?
Hmm. The issue is it's been a little bit more difficult when it comes to understanding the vision with Arber, but I think he's done well in the recent past. I think he's outplayed Jayden Struble. Let's call
Right.
a spade, right?
Yeah.
But when you are a general manager, and I hate to talk about players like assets, when you're a general manager, if your third pair defenseman has heightened value and it would allow you to go and get maybe a number 4 right shot defenseman, then I can understand the idea, right? If your third pair defenseman, according to another team, is worth a first round pick, well, then you have to. I'm not saying he's going to garner a first round pick, but like the equivalent of a first round pick. Well, then you have to consider that, right? Because there's more value to the Canadians right now in trying to get a similar type player that's a right shot defenseman with more experience, perhaps, because you have Adam Engstrom coming up, because you have David Reinbacher coming up, and then later down that list, guys like Owen Protz, guys like Bryce Pickford, who's scoring at will.
Yeah.
So you're always going to have guys coming up, and I feel like when it comes to Struble, when it comes to Xhekaj, they've reached their ceilings. They're not going to play any higher in the lineup, so you need a different kind of element. The only thing I would say with Arber Xhekaj is he plays the exact style that they're looking for.
Right. So like that begs the question then. It's the
Mhm.
obvious follow-up and conversation worth having, right? I mean, is it awareness? Is it hockey sense? Better, quicker to apply the hockey sense to a situation? Is it mobility? What
The
what
Canadians,
is it, Marco? What is it?
the Canadians aren't going to keep going forward with 4 left shot defensemen playing in their lineup unless that fourth defenseman is Adam Engstrom.
Right.
He's the only defenseman that can play the right as well as he plays the left. And that's because he's been playing the right his entire professional career, dating back to Sweden. So that's the only reason why, when I think long term, I can understand it. But the Canadians are not going to play with 4 lefties, sometimes 5 lefties.
Right.
The whole time. It affects the ability. It changes the dynamic in the defensive zone with stick placement, the ability to be able to do quick zone breakouts, which the Canadians rely upon heavily for their transition game. Like there's all those different elements. And I would be weary about trading Arber Xhekaj. I would be really careful. Really careful. Like I understand fans that are like, you don't trade players like Arber Xhekaj, but what if you get a right shot version of him?
Right.
Are you more apt to consider that? Right? Because remember, the Canadiens were interested, momentarily, but we're interested in finding out what the price point was in Rasmus Ristolainen. That's not by chance. Why would you go and get a bruiser like that? Or no, I wouldn't say a bruiser. He's not. I wouldn't say he's an aggressor.
No,
but why would
no.
you? Why would you go get a crease clearing, big right shot defenseman if the idea wasn't to change the dynamic? Because in going to get a player that could play the right side, you're essentially sliding Jayden Gooley down to third pair left D, correct? And then you're going to supplement his minutes by putting him on special teams, specifically on the penalty kill.
Yeah.
Well, when in doing that, then who's the right shot defenseman that plays on the third pair? Is it Carrier? Carrier signed until the end of next season.
That's right.
Are you going to put Arber Xhekaj as a right shot D playing with Jayden Gooley? I don't think so. And I don't think that I think that keeping him as a seventh defenseman is a waste of his time. He's a better player than that. And I think it's a waste of his value. So if that's the direction the Canadiens want to take, I can understand the temptation to potentially move a guy like Arber Xhekaj if the idea is to go and get a more physical, seasoned right shot D. If it's just a straight trade like that, I would be a little concerned. I would feel like if this were to happen, it would require, it wouldn't be like trading Xhekaj for a pick. You'd need to get an element out of it that would make sense.
I think you're 100% on the mark in terms of the return for Arber Xhekaj. You need to address a need. And for a variety of reasons, Arber Xhekaj's game through the eyes, I would imagine, through his coaching staff and probably management as well. If there's an upgrade to be had, there's an upgrade to be had at the end of the day. But maybe, in a larger context, you appear with Connor McKenna and I every Wednesday at 8:05 for Habs breakfast. And to recap the loss in San Jose to kick off the California trip, you talked about the defensive side, the coverage, chasing offensive players. I can't help but wonder about the complexion of the Canadiens' defense overall. Marco, they've banked on a lot of speed and a lot of skill. Do you see that turning into a bigger problem?
I think there is organizationally, I think there's an overall efficacy issue. And I think that applies to the players that they have currently on their team, right? I think, Sean, you and I could agree that the game becomes different in the playoffs.
All day.
Right?
All day.
Right? And I think there's a difference in defending in the regular season versus defending in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's what really killed the Canadiens last year. It wasn't that they weren't scoring enough. Granted, they could have scored more goals. But it was really their ability to stop them. And I think that's really what did them in, is that, yes, there's a tighter checking game that's played. I understand that. First two games, Samuel Montembeault before his injury really stood on his head. And then after that, it was, it felt like Washington just kept taking advantage of open ice. Well, I don't feel like that's improved. And I don't feel like to say I don't feel like that's improved. I mean that in a general term, the entire defensive brigade. I think that Lane Hudson and Noah Dobson is a fantastic first pair that does great. I just don't think they found their shutdown pair. And I feel like if the Canadiens are going to be successful, Mike Matheson and Jayden Gooley have to play in different places. Like they have to play on different pairs.
Yep.
So when you're factoring the whole picture in, yeah, I think there's an issue there. And I think that the way that they're utilizing Struble and or Xhekaj, I think it's a little problematic because of that. And so anybody who's watching right now is thinking, yes, the goaltending could be better, but, the defense needs to be better, especially if they're going to want to contend, because you look at, I remind myself of what happened with the Florida Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that season the Florida Panthers popped off? Huberdeau had 115 points. They were a pure offensive team. And then they made the trade, got Matthew Tkachuk,
Mm-hmm.
played a more
Change their
structured
identity.
defensive game under
Yeah.
Paul Maurice and went and started to get players that can play bigger
Mm-hmm.
and are more crease clearing. Like there are no defensive stars on the Florida Panthers. I don't think so anyway. I think Seth Jones is no longer a number one defenseman in this league. I think the only one who is probably a shadow number one right now that you could really talk about is Gustav Forsling. But there are no like superstars.
No.
There is no like Norris defenseman on that team, but it's team defense that wins it for them. And I think that's where the Canadians are trying to start thinking to themselves like, yes, they have the elements to be offensive drivers. Lane Hudson and Noah Dobson are probably, well, I mean, Lane Hudson already is, but Noah Dobson is going to hit 50 points this year at this rate. Not many teams have two defensemen with 50 points in their lineup. Not many. I'd have to go back and check, but I don't know if there's any team right now trending to have two defensemen with 50 points. So that is an important distinction to make. So clearly you have the offense from the back end because even Mike Matheson's getting into the fun.
Exactly.
It is a structural need to defend.
Yeah.
And that's why I like Arber Xhekaj. I like the idea. But the moment the Canadians extended Mike Matheson, a decision was going to have to be made as to whether you keep Caden Gooley or Arber Xhekaj on the left side.
And it's funny too. I mean, I don't think anybody has more block shots this year than Noah Dobson to complement, the offensive season he's having, right? I mean, but again, and I think this conversation ends with the question that you put out there, and that everybody watching this channel, listening to this show today, fully understands the gulf that exists between what's required to manage output in 82 games versus how do I win 4 games in a best of 7 series? And it gets that much more challenging as the playoffs, if you're lucky enough to get past round 1 and on we go into the playoffs, and how that game is played. And right now, I think, Marco, we can both agree and have common ground here that the complexion of the Canadian 6 defensemen, it doesn't pass the test today.
It's not going to work. It's not going to work. They may get it. They may get into the playoffs with it, but they won't get far in the playoffs with it.
All right, keep it locked. Don't forget, Star and D'Amico will be here to cover the NHL trade deadline live Friday afternoon starting at 2:30. And as always, a reminder to the road to 20,000 subscribers begins with each and every single one of you. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. And we'll see you live Friday and set up the Habs. And Canadians don't play till Friday night in Southern California after the 7-5 loss to San Jose on Tuesday night. Marco, thanks as always. Looking forward to our Friday trade deadline recap show.
Always a pleasure, guys. Have a great day.